Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into how the internet basically engineered a brand new type of horror, one that, terrifyingly enough, accidentally bled right into the real world. We're talking about the birth and the heavy burden of creepypasta. Okay, so picture this. It's 2009. You're just scrolling through a totally standard internet forum, and you come across a photograph. It looks like just two kids standing by a park fountain. Totally normal, right? But then you read the clinical little description right underneath it. It points out this impossibly tall, faceless thing standing just at the edge of the trees behind them. And the caption casually notes that neither child was ever found. Reading that, man, your hands just instantly go cold. In that exact moment, your brain really only asks one question. Is this real? And that split second, that tiny moment of hesitation where your brain genuinely couldn't decide if the threat was real or entirely fake, that hesitation right there is exactly what birthed modern digital folklore.
Section 1. The Birth of Digital Horror, moving from gatekeepers to open forums.
So, to really understand how this happened, we have to look at this massive shift. Before the internet, fear was, well, heavily managed. Pre-internet horror had publishers, studios, budgets, editors. Someone literally had to approve your monster in a corporate boardroom. But then we hit the digital frontier. Suddenly, we've got anonymous forums, instant sharing, unverified content. We went from these studio-approved monsters to weird image boards where a story didn't actually have to be true. It just had to feel true enough to completely bypass our logic.
Section 2. Anatomy of a Creepypasta.
Now, the term creepypasta itself is a mashup of creepy and copy-paste. And copy-paste was just early internet slang for text that users constantly copied and pasted everywhere. We're talking about stories, fake documents, heavily edited photographs, all designed to move through the internet exactly like a rumor spreads through a small town. The format itself was the vehicle for the fear. They had totally anonymous origins, absolutely no resolution, and people would share them at 2 in the morning simply as warnings. There was no safety net at the end to pat you on the back and tell you it was just a story.
These early viral entities started popping up everywhere on boards like 4chan and Something Awful. You might remember some of these: the Russian sleep experiment, Smile Dog, Ted the Caver, and of course, Jeff the Killer. Actually, Jeff the Killer proved early on that an image alone could do all the heavy lifting. It was basically just a picture of this bleached face with an impossibly stretched smile and these eyes that just wouldn't close. And it haunted people's closed eyelids long before anyone even bothered to write a coherent story around it. The image planted the fear first.
Section 3. Creating the Slender Man.
But there's one specific entity that perfectly showcases this crazy crowdsourced nature of internet myth-making. Slender Man wasn't just written by some solitary author sitting in a dark room. He was collaboratively assembled, in real time. It all started back in June 2009 when Eric Knudsen, who posted under the name Victor Surge, uploaded 2 fake paranormal photos on a Something Awful forum. And from there, it just exploded. Users organically crowdsourced his behaviors. They decided, oh, he likes forests, or he makes cameras malfunction. Within a single year, this birthed short films, endless artwork, and the massively famous Marble Hornets video series. Literally hundreds of users with zero coordination were building the exact same monster together.
And here's the genius part. Knudsen didn't write some spooky, over-the-top campfire tale. Instead, his original captions were super brief and clinical. They used the dry, factual language of witness accounts rather than fiction. And honestly, that dry tone is exactly what made it so incredibly insidious.
Section 4. The Psychology of Fear and the Cognitive Gap.
So you might be wondering, how on earth does a fake image on a random forum bypass our rational minds so easily? Well, it all comes down to something called the cognitive gap. This is that half second of genuine, visceral uncertainty. Your brain's survival mechanism looks at the image, frantically searches for signs that the threat is fake, and finds almost none. These early creators understood, almost by pure instinct, that horror isn't really about the monster itself. It's about that terrifying, completely blank space right before you know what the monster actually is.
When you look at how digital horror is engineered, there's a very clear divide between what fails and what actually works. What fails? Stuff like way too much blood, over-explaining the monster's origins, using a bunch of exclamation points, basically just trying way too hard. But what works? Restraint, a clinical tone, unnamed threats, and evidence-style formatting. This really shows us that restraint and unexplained elements bypass our logic so much more effectively than your traditional, over-the-top gore. It actually teaches us what professional filmmakers sometimes forget, that occasionally, The unseen is literally the sharpest tool in the room.
Section 5. When fiction becomes real.
We have to pivot now to look at the very real, very sobering consequences of what happens when this psychological phenomenon breaches the digital realm. That breach happened in the spring of 2014. That was the year the crowdsourced fiction stepped out of the screen and into a very real park in Waukesha, Wisconsin.
During what became known as the Waukesha incident, two 12-year-old girls lured their friend into the woods and stabbed her 19 times. The victim, incredibly thankfully, did survive. But when the police asked for a motive, the perpetrators said they did it to prove Slender Man was real. They wanted to become his proxies. They were subsequently tried as adults. And this event, it really forced the entire internet to finally sit down and face the stark, chilling reality of what it had built.
Eric Knudsen, the creator of that original Photoshop experiment, could only offer a brief, incredibly somber statement, simply saying he was deeply saddened. Society, the legal system, and these massive internet communities were all left struggling with a completely unprecedented question. How do you even begin to grieve a piece of collaborative fiction that somehow became real enough to cause literal, physical harm?
And that leaves us with this massively unresolved psychological question, one that experts are still analyzing today. Did those girls possess a genuine, literal belief that the monster was real? Or did the fiction merely act as a permission structure? A framework that just organized a darkness or intent that was already existing inside them. There is no clean, easy answer to this. And honestly, that ambiguity, it's perhaps more terrifying than the fictional monster ever was.
Section 6. The mechanism remains.
The thing is, this digital ecosystem isn't just some weird relic from 2009. It is the exact modern landscape we navigate every single day. We still constantly encounter media with no clear origin or author names. We still get weird, unexplained links sent to us late at night. We still consume deeply specific, documented feeling stories and strange images that plant these quiet, nagging questions in the back of our minds. Sure, the platforms might have shifted from obscure message boards to modern, slick apps, but the core mechanism, that anonymous, unverified, deeply specific storytelling, it remains completely identical.
So, unpacking the anatomy of this digital folklore leaves us with one really haunting final thought. We now know exactly where the monsters in the pixels come from. We've literally seen their blueprint. But does knowing exactly how these viral fears are engineered make them any less dangerous to our minds? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'm going to leave you to think on that.